Yeah, I suppose it does slightly alter things because say Mainu stays, and but again, his contract situation would need to be addressed in the summer certainly. That does then at least alter the expectation, I think, for United needing to get two midfielders in.
Laurie Whitwell of The Athletic, one of the brightest stars in the Manchester United media galaxy. Thank you very much indeed for coming on.
Well, with a sell like that, who could deny you? Thanks for having me, Steve. I know it's been a long time coming. Be good to chat to you.
Well, some things are worth a drum roll. I should start with a well-being check, really, because you've been on paternity leave and then you've gone from that to the
Y-
maddest January at United, certainly in the last 25 years, and possibly far beyond that. What have you made of it all?
Yeah, it's been crazy, really. I mean, yeah, you try and sort of time having a bit of a breakaway with a moment that might be a little bit more leisurely paced, shall we say? Obviously, never really the case with Manchester United. There's always something going on, but I sort of thought, well, obviously, Ruben Amorim's the biggest story around United, whether he's going to stay or go, and it felt like he would see out the season. Certainly after that sort of run in the autumn time, but obviously things came to a head pretty suddenly, and so at that moment, as a journalist, you have to dive straight into it. You can't sort of say, "Well, I had this time away plan, so yeah, that's the job." And actually, really enjoyable getting into the details of things and trying to find out why things have happened. That's at the heart of the job, really. That's what attracted me to it in the first place. So, yeah, it's been pretty crazy, though. Even by United standards, for it to have unravelled so quickly with Amorim, and then you have Darren Fletcher as an interim or a caretaker, and then Michael Carrick comes in as a caretaker for a longer period of time. So it's been, yeah, back to back to back sort of news stories, and then all climaxing, I suppose, to a certain degree with the Derby win, which was one of the best performances by a United team I can remember in years. So yeah, at least there's been that at the end of it for this little period, at least.
You're renowned as obviously one of the most informed journalists on the United beat. So well, I've got you, if I may, I'd like to wring as much information out of you as possible. We'll
Feel
start where
free.
everybody always starts with that sweet nectar of transfer rumours. What are you hearing? Because the sounding was that it was going to be quite a quiet January, certainly in terms of permanent moves. But then there's just one or two names: Wilfred Ndidi, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, coming out as possible loan targets in the last day or two. What do you know about that situation and about just United's intentions overall, sort of incomings and outgoings?
Yeah, I mean, maybe things change a little bit as the month goes on, but certainly going into the window, the expectation was that it would only be, small deals that would happen, if any, to be honest. Kobe Mainu being a key sort of, I guess, piece in all that, and his potential departure, which he wanted at the time because Ruben Amorim was head coach and wasn't picking him, certainly wasn't starting him in Premier League games. Obviously, that's changed now, and he started the Manchester Derby, played well in it. I don't see how he is allowed to leave, even temporarily this month. So I think that has a knock-on effect there for the rest of United's business. And, the word has been that they would only do deals that were sort of long-term deals that perhaps were available then in January. So the Antoine Semenyo one being a key case in point where ultimately they weren't able to get him to join them, and he's gone to Man City. I guess it's quite an ironic moment with Mainu sort of body shuffling his way past Semenyo in the derby to such a dramatic and enjoyable degree. But then, yeah, obviously that was kind of a key instigator in Amorim being sort of so despondent about United, but when the fact that Semenyo didn't come through the door, and maybe he felt that that was the club perhaps not doing all they could to get a player in, and somebody who would certainly have elevated what he could do in the second half of the season. But I still don't really get a sense that United will look aggressively to do those kind of deals. I mean, Ruben Loftus-Cheek and Wilfred Ndidi aren't exactly names to move the dial for United. I don't really see the value unless they do allow, for example, Manuel Ugarte to go. We've reported today in the Athletic that Ajax have made an inquiry for him on loan. United have said no at this point, and again, I still would have doubts about even them saying yes at any stage, just because this is a player that at least they know what they can get from him, and the kind of, okay, he's not been perfect certainly, and maybe that's one that they look at in the summer for a sale full term, but certainly they understand what he can do, and sort of changing him for another player that doesn't really get the get you emotional, get you kind of excited, then I don't see the point of that personally. But yeah, and same for Joshua Zirkzee. Roma have had a kind of loan with obligation offer put to United, but at the moment that's not going anywhere. It doesn't feel like so. Maybe something happens towards the end of the month, but at the moment the noises it seems to me around the club are that expecting a quiet one.
In terms of the sort of other temporary moves, the younger lads around the club, any loans in the pipeline for Harry Amas, Tyler Fredrickson, Toby Collier, Chido Obi, that ilk of player?
Yeah, well, we reported today on Tyler Fredrickson. He obviously is a young centre back who has had, first 2 minutes of the season, only a couple of games, but has been in the squad, certainly match day squads a few times. So he was knocking on the door, I suppose, for inclusion under Ruben Amorim when you've got these three centre back positions. But now it's clearly going to be just two positions for him to fight for. There doesn't really seem a great deal of point having him at the club and not playing games. So I would imagine they look at allowing him out on loan. I'm told that there's been several inquests from clubs already in terms of sort of English Football League, plus also some in Europe. So yeah, that's probably one to watch as we go along. Toby Collier, yeah, he interesting case. Obviously, he was named one in terms of Ruben Amorim sort of having a bit of a pushback against the once he was trying to defend his position on Kobe Mainoo. So sort of Toby Collier was a bit of collateral in that. And his loan at West Brom didn't go exactly to plan because he picked up a couple of injuries and it was difficult for him to get in the team at that point. So anyway, United recalled him from that loan and they were looking at what to do with him in this month. I think he's due back fit sort of in the coming days maybe. So at the end of the window, they'll probably have a look to solidify where they send him if they do send him out on loan. I think Hull City obviously have expressed their interest strongly in him. They had a look at him strongly in the summer as well, so I could see that one happening before the end of the window.
Assuming there's little to no business this month, what are the main areas, to your knowledge, that they're looking at in terms of potential recruitment in the summer? Because obviously midfield has been an area that needs a little bit of a touch up for some time now. But
Yeah.
also, obviously, I mean, you would think that would be unchanged, but obviously Ruben had his targets as well, his areas that he wanted to bring people in. Has that changed at all, to your knowledge, now that there's obviously a new man in charge, temporarily even?
Yeah, I suppose it does slightly alter things because say Mainu stays and but again his contract situation would need to be addressed in the summer certainly. That does then at least alter the expectation I think for United needing to get two midfielders in because that was certainly the anticipation with the picture as it was. They might still do because Casemiro we think is going to depart. I mean certainly he's not going to stay on the wages that he is. I know. I reported last week on this clause in his contract that he could still trigger the +1 if he starts every Premier League game, and obviously did very well against Man City. So it's going to be an interesting moment when Michael Carrick takes him out of the team. But I would imagine that one is Casemiro parting from United come the summer. So you need to replace him. And yeah, the names have already been out there, haven't they? Elliot Anderson seems to be the one with the most weight behind it, and he's still for all Nottingham Forest struggles, I think he is performing at a pretty good level, and you can see the type of player that he is, the energy that he brings, the passing range that he's got. So I would keep an eye on that one. And then, yeah, Adam Wharton, Carlos Baleba, certainly Carlos Baleba, they've had talks over last summer. Will they revisit it this summer? Will they look at his season and think, yeah, we can take that for what it is in terms of him being maybe a little bit unsettled and not being at his best. So, we can come back to the negotiating table with Brighton and actually maybe get a better deal.
Awesome. Any other areas? 'Cause, I mean, obviously, who am I? But I look at that squad and I see, a gap for an experienced number nine just to come in as backup and just someone who a Chicharito figure to get you a goal when you're in a pinch. And obviously, right back, Mazraoui coming back in bolsters that as it does, with his versatility, it bolsters a lot of areas of the squad. But is right back anything that they're looking at, to your knowledge?
Yeah, I mean, striker is an interesting one because they did have a look at alternative options last summer. That experience that you speak of there, Steve. I mean, Danny Welbeck was one that they certainly had a proper look at, and look at how he's done this season. He's had back-to-back really good seasons for Brighton, actually. Dominic Calvert-Lewin actually was another name that I think was discussed as well, on a free from Everton, and he's had a pretty decent year at Leeds. So I don't know whether that actually will give United some further encouragement to, if they have an option of an experienced Premier League proven player, whilst they might not set the world alight, if they are attainable for a low cost and relatively modest wages, they should actually really do it because then you never know, particularly if they're in Europe, right? If they're in Europe next season, even Champions League it seems a possibility. They really have to have strength in depth and experience and quality in all areas, and getting goals is still going to be a key sort of aspect to that. I suppose with Mbumo starting up top against City and Cunha's played there as well. Sesko obviously would like to start every game, I'm sure, but you do have some alternative options. So I don't know how. I think it will be something they'll look at, but I don't know, at this stage yet whether they'll sort of pull the trigger on it. Yeah, right back. I see what you're saying there, Steve. I mean, Dallo has been the subject of criticism, hasn't he? I did feel he tries in it, and he does a lot of sort of good work, I think, and he obviously he's got a strong application to it. But just the quality moments seem to let him down, certainly in the derby. So I wonder if Mazraoui, when he comes back in, that right back slot will become his own. So yeah, I don't know. I don't really hear anything yet on United's transfer plans beyond the midfield position. But yeah, certainly they'll have a look at all areas, I would imagine.
Mentioned Casemiro, Harry Maguire's in a similar boat. Arguably two of the most consistent performers that United have had in the last year. They're obviously both out of contract. To your knowledge, in each situation, is there an appetite for negotiation on both sides?
I mean, Maguire certainly, I would imagine, would like to stay. He obviously can speak to foreign clubs now. They've already triggered the +1 in his deal from last summer, so it would be a case of renegotiating for a lower wage, really. Yeah, I could see that one maybe happening just because of the kind of special skill set that he's got in the squad. Set pieces are a big thing. He is obviously hugely, important in both boxes in that regard. I know he probably should have scored against City, but equally he did provide the header that then set off the counter attack that United scored from the first goal. So I would imagine I think they could come around the table on that one actually, but I think they will probably wait until the end of the season. He's obviously I think 32 now, so he's got sort of time still to give a little bit in terms of that centre back role. Casemiro is a different one just because he earned so much money, so would he really accept the drastic reduction that United would demand to stay on? It'd be fascinating if he did, because it felt like he was the guy that certainly when Ineos took over and Sir Jim Ratcliffe made these points internally when they were going through the accounts that he was a bad signing in terms of the amount of money that it took. But to then sort of extend it beyond that period would be quite a fascinating turnaround. But he has had a good season, so you never know. I don't think you can discount that kind of experience and quality that both those guys have had.
Moving away from sort of transfers and contracts, between now and the end of the season, there's talk of mid-season friendlies. Now that we're out of the FA Cup and we know exactly
Hmm.
the rest of the Premier League schedule, there's talk of mid-season friendlies to bolster the coffers, as it were. Are you hearing anything on that? Because you look at the calendars. There's a nice gap between West Ham and Everton, Newcastle and Villa, and then the start of April post international break. So there's no shortage of opportunity, is there?
Yeah, I think that's one they'll probably have a look at again. We did the story, I think, before Christmas, where we sort of said Saudi Arabia is a possibility. Looking over there to fly out, and at that point it felt. I mean, an awkward one, but Ruben Amorim backed it in a press conference saying, yeah, we know we need to do this kind of thing to get the money in. It depends who you speak to, how much that could be worth. We're talking millions of pounds. So that isn't to be discounted. I mean, United have done this before, gone to the Middle East and played friendlies. And I guess, in this season of no European competition and only two matches in cup competitions. Whether you are right that those gaps that have now opened up in the calendar would at least lend themselves to a trip without it feeling like it would be too detrimental to performance. But then again, if you do set that against potential Champions League qualification, how much money that would bring. There's a little bit of a pressure there, I would say, to not waste that opportunity. But yeah, I don't know. I could see them having more talks on this. I think that is ongoing as we speak right now. Whether or not something actually does get arranged, I still don't know yet.
Laurie, that's brilliant. Thank you so much for your time. Top man for coming on. Cheers.
No, no worries, Steve. Of course. Cheers.